The evacuation left one man behind. The invasion found one problem waiting. Jaxon Vane honestly hadn't meant to miss the last transport out of mining outpost Omicron 4. He had simply been deep inside the guts of a temperamental, subsonic recycler, wearing noise-canceling headphones, trying to calibrate a gasket that had been vibrating off-key for 3 weeks. When he finally crawled out, wiping grease from his forehead with the back of a scarred glove, the hangar bay was empty. The silence wasn't the heavy dread of abandonment, though. It was just quiet, peaceful even, until the atmospheric alarms started blaring. Most species, when faced with a Zentari blockade fleet darkening the sky, would panic. They would scramble for the comms or hide in the ventilation shafts. Jaxon just sighed. When he looked at his half-drunk mug of lukewarm coffee, then at the sprawling schematics on his datapad, and decided that if he was going to be invaded, he wasn't going to let them track mud all over his freshly waxed floors. The first squad of Zentari shock troops breached the airlock with the grace of apex predators. They were magnificent, really. 7 feet of iridescent chitin and shifting bioarmor, designed to intimidate entire solar systems into submission. They swept into the main corridor, plasma lances raised expecting resistance. What they got was a friction coefficient of near 0. Jaxon had diverted the hydraulic lubricant from the loading bay. It was a simple matter of engineering resilience, really. Knowing that the outpost circulatory system could be rerouted with a few valve turns. The lead trooper hit the slick surface, his taloned feet scrambling for purchase like a frantic crab on ice, before he slid unceremoniously into a stack of empty cargo crates. Clang. From his perch on the catwalk above, Jaxon winced. That sounded painful. "Careful," he called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous bay. "The floor is wet." I put up a sign, but you guys came through the emergency hatch. The Zentari froze. Well, the ones who weren't currently tangled in a pile of limbs and confused clicking noises froze. They looked up, sensors sweeping, expecting a platoon of Marines. Instead, they saw a middle-aged human in oil-stained coveralls, holding a wrench like a baton and looking genuinely concerned for their safety. This was the moment High Matriarch Valeria decided to intervene. She had watched the feed from her command ship, her dual hearts beating a slow, rhythmic thrum of irritation. She came to conquer a sector but stopped for the engineer throwing frozen peas. Technically, he hadn't thrown them yet. He was just holding the bag of frozen produce, the only thing heavy and dense enough in the breakroom freezer to serve as a distraction, and weighing it thoughtfully in his palm. But the sheer audacity of it, the baffling casualness of this lone biological unit, triggered a curiosity that overrode her tactical protocols. She descended to the surface not with a war party, but with her personal guard. The airlock cycled, hissing as it equalized, and Valeria stepped onto the station. She was breathtaking. Her carapace was a deep, polished obsidian, etched with gold filaments that pulsed with her internal body heat. She towered over the human, her presence filling the room with the scent of ozone and ancient starlight. Her thermal pits flared, tasting the air, trying to read the pheromones of this adversary. She expected fear, acrid, sharp, delicious fear. Instead, she tasted peppermint and annoyance. Jaxon leaned over the railing, looking down at the High Matriarch. He didn't see a conquering warlord. He saw someone who was about to walk right into the steam vent he had rigged to blow at regular intervals to regulate the station's pressure. "Wait!" Jaxon shouted, waving the bag of peas. "Don't step on the yellow line!" Valeria paused, her foot hovering inches above the hazard strip. She looked up, her fasted eyes narrowing. It was diplomacy via industrial sabotage, though she didn't know it yet. "You command this facility?" Valeria's voice was a subsonic purr, translated by the device on her collar into a smooth, synthetic alto. "I maintain it," Jaxon corrected, sliding down the ladder with a practiced ease that spoke of decades working in low gravity. "And you're letting all the heat out. Do you have any idea how hard it is to keep the humidity stable in here?" He landed on the deck, a few meters from her. Up close, the size difference was comical. He had to crane his neck back to look at her face. Any survival instinct should have been screaming at him to run, to beg, to do something other than fret over the thermostat. But Jaxon was possessed by that peculiar Terran empathy that confused the rest of the galaxy. The instinct that made humans pack bond with anything, even the terrifying alien warlord currently occupying their hallway. Valeria's scales rippled, a physiological flush of confusion turning them a faint, flushed violet. He was so soft, no armor, no exoskeletal plating, just pinkish skin and soft fibers. And yet he stood there with his hands on his hips, radiating the energy of a parent scolding a child for leaving the door open. "My troops," Valeria said, gesturing to the elite shock squad still trying to stand up on the lubricated floor. "They are incapacitated." "Yeah, sorry about that," Jaxon said, rubbing the back of his neck. He actually looked apologetic. "It's industrial grade. Takes forever to wash off. I have some solvent in the back if you want to help them." Valeria blinked. Her primary eyelids slid shut, then her secondary translucent nictitating membranes flickered. Help them? He had defeated her vanguard with floor polish, and now he was offering cleaning supplies? "Why?" she asked, the words slipping out before she could stop it. "Because they look uncomfortable," Jaxon said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. "And I don't want them scratching the plating. I just buffed that." He turned, not waiting for permission, and walked toward a supply closet. "Truth is, I was about to make lunch." "You guys hungry?" "I think I have enough ration bars." Valeria stood rooted to the spot. Her hearts were racing now, not from the thrill of battle, but from a profound biological bewilderment. The heat radiating from the small creature was not aggressive. It was warm, steady, and utterly inviting. It was a trap, surely. It had to be a trap. But as Jaxon rummaged through the closet, clanking buckets and humming a tune that sounded vaguely like jazz, Valeria lowered her plasma lance. She signaled her guards to hold. The invasion had officially stalled, not because of a shield generator or a fleet of starfighters, but because a human had offered them a towel. The breakroom was uncomfortably small for an 8-foot matriarch of the Zentari Empire. But Jaxon didn't seem to notice the spatial violation. He was too busy wrestling with the station's microwave, hitting the side of it with the heel of his hand until it hummed to life with a reluctant groan. Valeria sat on a stool that groaned in sympathy, her knees drawn up awkwardly. She watched him. Her tactical HUD was frantically trying to categorize his threat level, cycling between civilian, combatant, and anomaly. It finally settled on error 404. Logic not found. "You used friction," she said, the statement hanging in the air like smoke. "My vanguard is trained in zero-gravity breaching, plasma deflection, and psychic resistance. And you defeated them with reduced friction." Jaxon pulled 2 steaming mugs from the machine. "Honestly, it was just the hydraulic fluid from the loading arm. It leaks. I've been meaning to patch it, but the requisition forms take weeks." He slid a mug toward her. "It's hot chocolate." "Well, chocolate-flavored nutrient slurry. It's better if you don't think about the texture." Valeria stared at the brown liquid. Her thermal sensors picked up the heat radiating from the ceramic. It was approximately a 45 degrees Celsius, optimal for comforting endothermic life forms. She reached out, her obsidian claws clicking softly against the table, and wrapped her hand around the mug. The heat seeped into her palm, traveling up her arm and settling somewhere near her primary heart. It was a sensation she hadn't felt since she was a hatchling in the brood warmers. It was disarming. "Why didn't you vent the atmosphere?" she asked, her voice softer now, losing the synthetic edge of the translator. "It is standard protocol for a siege. You could have killed them all instantly." Jaxon looked horrified. He stopped mid-sip, a milk mustache clinging to his upper lip. "And ruin the filters? Do you have any idea how much dust that sucks into the intake? Besides," he gestured vaguely toward the hallway, where her troops were currently helping each other stand up, slipping and sliding with surprising camaraderie. "They're just doing a job, like me. Seemed rude to suffocate them for clocking in. Yet Valeria felt a shift in her chest, a physical realignment of her internal organs. Her dual hearts, usually beating in a staggered syncopation for combat readiness, fell into a singular, slow rhythm. It was a biological response to safety, to care. This human wasn't fighting a war. He was managing a household. She watched him sip his drink, his eyes scanning a datapad on the table. He was completely at ease in the presence of a predator. It wasn't bravery, she realized. It was something far more dangerous. It was a total lack of aggressive instinct replaced by an overwhelming drive to maintain, to fix, to nurture. If he could weaponize a slippery floor and a bag of frozen peas to protect a mining station, what could he do with a warp core? Jaxon, she said, testing the name. It felt strange on her tongue, short and blunt compared to the flowing syntax of her people. Yeah, my flagship, the Ethelgard, has a hyperdrive stabilizer that has been vibrating off-key for 3 cycles. My chief engineers say it is within operational tolerance. Jackson's eyes lit up. He set his mug down with a clatter. Is it a low-frequency hum, like a thrum-thrum click? Valeria leaned forward, the gold filaments on her armor glowing brighter. Precisely. It drives me to madness. It's the containment gasket, Jaxon said, nodding sagely. It's always the gasket. They probably tightened the flange too much. You have to torque it by hand. You can't trust the automated wrenches. Valeria stood up. The movement was fluid, regal, but the threat was gone. In its place was an offer. Come with me. Jaxon blinked. Like, as a prisoner? Because I really don't do well in cells. Why I get bored and I start taking apart the locks. No, Valeria said. A smile tugged at the corners of her mandibles, a terrifying expression that was somehow also incredibly charming. As a consultant, I need someone who can defeat an elite invasion force with cleaning supplies. I need someone who understands that the machine and the crew must be cared for, not just commanded. She extended a hand. It was large enough to crush his skull, but she held it open, palm up, a universal gesture of peace that transcended biology. Jaxon looked at her hand, then back at his empty coffee mug, and finally at the flickering light of the break room. He looked at the schematics on his datapad, the lonely layout of a station that no longer needed him. Do I get to fix the stabilizer? He asked. Valeria's heart gave a singular, powerful thump. What, you can fix whatever you want, Jaxon Vane. He stood up, wiping his hand on his coveralls before taking hers. His skin was soft, warm, and fragile against her scales. It was the human touch, illogical, vulnerable, and absolutely vital. All right then, Jaxon said, grinning. But let me grab my toolbox and the rest of the frozen peas. You never know when you'll need a good distraction. Valeria watched him bustle away, already making a mental list of things to organize on her ship. She had come to this sector looking for resources, for fuel, for dominance. She was leaving with an engineer who smelled like cinnamon and oil, and for the first time in a century, the universe didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a project.